My wife's parents are tearing her down yet again. I'm absolutely at a loss for solutions. First, a little background. My wife had a very emotionally forgettable childhood with her parents. Stereotypical rich parents that emotionally neglect their children and throw money at issues to make things better rather than apologizing. They have always done this with friends, family, you name it, and have ruined countless relationships because of their insincerity and arrogance. My wife is her mother's only child, but her dad has two much older sons from a previous marriage that he's done a great job. One is an alcoholic due in part to a very traumatic childhood, and the other has more felonies than a cat has lives. Both are complete deadbeats taking advantage of the system out of laziness, not necessity. By some miracle, my wife has turned out to be an amazing, caring, gorgeous, successful woman despite the trauma she endured from her parents as a child and still to this day. Her dad is the poster child for narcissism, and her mom is as spineless as they come and has historically deflected her husband's anger issues onto her daughter, which has resulted in years of therapy. She still goes decades later, constant physical abuse, insecurities, etc. Her mom chose a cushy life for herself with a rich husband at the expense of her and her daughter's physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Her mom always goes along with whatever her dad says as a means of self-preservation. My wife and her mom both have battered woman syndrome. My parents live about an hour away from us, and her parents live about 4 away, but also bought a winter home down south right when we started dating a few years back. Onto the issue. My dad recently approached my sister and I with an idea to throw my mom a surprise birthday party. Of course we accepted, and it was a huge success. My wife was not asked but volunteered to help organize. My wife's parents have a history of being nice to my face then talking behind my back to my wife about me, my career, my parents, and my family in general. My wife and I can't tell them anything without it being used against us, and any time they do something for anyone, not just us, it's only to make themselves seem so great and so that it can be held over your head later on. I have always tried to be the bigger person and not say anything in front of them in an effort to keep the peace. We just hit the breaking point. We do a lot to travel to see her parents, and my wife calls them 6 to 7 days a week and still texts them if they don't talk on the phone that day. Tomorrow will be the last time she spoke to her dad. On her last phone call with her parents, her dad called her fat, this day as well as in general, which resulted in an eating disorder as a child. She is far from it, called her a puppet for helping me and my dad and sister with this party, and told her she is a weak person. My wife has overcome a lot from her childhood and is particularly proud of herself and her inner strength, so calling her weak really gets to her. She hung up the phone crying, making it very known that she was hurt. Her dad texts her 2 days later to tell her that he expects her to be traveling home that weekend and that he hopes they can have a light-hearted weekend and just forget about the other day. She doesn't respond, so her mom calls her about an hour later and my wife explains exactly what the issue is and how it's made her feel. Instead of consoling her child that she just witnessed her husband verbally abuse for the 180,954,267th time 2 days prior, she says, "Well, just come home and ignore it, you know how he gets." This seems to be the family excuse/deflection, you know how he gets. My wife has created a healthy barrier for herself that I fully support. She hasn't talked to them in almost a month and refuses to do so until they are open to having a meaningful, sincere conversation. She isn't even asking for them to apologize, only to have a discussion about how to talk to her respectfully. They refuse to call and she is standing strong, although it clearly affects her daily. It prevents her from working and we discuss it for 30+ minutes daily. She knows that backing down and calling them only destroys the barrier she has suffered this last month to build. I'm so proud of her for sticking up for herself. She never wants me to say anything to them, no matter how much I tell her I want to or need to, whether it's about how they make her feel or how they make me feel when trashing me and or my family. Her relationship with her parents isn't my business, but someone hurting my wife and upsetting her on a daily basis absolutely is. We are both out of ideas on how to proceed from here. She knows her parents are bad, but at the end of the day they're her parents and she wants to maintain a relationship with them. I personally don't feel they will ever have a healthy relationship, but I have always supported whatever she chooses to do. I've encouraged her to put the same level of communication she's used to having with her parents into talking to her grandparents and nephew, but it just isn't the same. How do we put this issue to bed so that she can have her life back without this over her head 24/7? Comment. So, yes, your wife has and is currently being emotionally abused by her parents. But at this point she's choosing that abuse over your marriage. Have a longer conversation with your wife about this. You need to establish a few boundaries here. First is that she needs to uphold the existing boundary and not contact them first. Second, is that I'd push her to go no contact with them for a while. At this point it's damaging your marriage. She's subjecting herself to daily emotional abuse, but then you have to deal with the fallout, and she's demanding that you don't stand up for her and allow someone else to treat her like shit so she can then be unable to carry out daily life afterwards. No more visiting them so she can be subjected to that abuse for hours or days on end, then you deal with the aftermath. Honestly, this should be a non-negotiable for your marriage to continue. Either she stands up for herself and she begins to separate herself from the abusers, or you can't stay with her. It's extremely unfair to you for her to put you in the situation of dealing with that aftermath because she's unwilling to take control of her life. This is absolutely your business. Stand up for her. Let her know that this is a boundary for you, that you won't tolerate anyone abusing her when you're around. If she happens to be in contact with them, and you witness abuse, you need to step in. Don't just stand by while her father demeans her if she's not willing to stand up for herself. At some point, your wife has to take accountability for her role in this. She keeps subjecting herself to mistreatment despite how it affects her daily life and your time together. She had to start making the choice to extricate herself. And she can't expect you to sit idly by and watch, or be her support person for emotional self-flagellation. She is not choosing her heartbreak over her marriage, she cannot help it. She needs to get to a place where she can forgive them for herself and not for them. My husband has watched me suffer for 20 years surrounding the bad treatment from my alcoholic twin brother. We grew up dirt poor with a mother that had severe psychiatric issues and alcoholism from self-medicating. Seems whether rich or poor, people can have reasons to not be happy. Yes, she is choosing this, and she absolutely can help it. Just because she's being emotionally abused does not completely release her of her culpability for her own actions and subjecting herself to it. I say this as someone who came from very emotionally abusive toxic family, and married to someone who has emotionally abusive toxic family. When you're an adult, it's absolutely a choice of what you're willing to subject yourself to. I had a very emotionally abusive parent whose treatment of me caused a lot of depression and was affecting my personal life, marital life, and ability to be a good parent. I absolutely made the choice one day that I was done subjecting myself to that abuse and I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore, and I made a choice to walk away from it for the sake of myself and my family. I supported my wife as she came to the same conclusion regarding her own family. Now none of that is to say that it's an easy choice. It takes a lot of soul searching to put oneself at ease with walking away from abusive family. But at the end of the day, as an adult, it's a choice being made. I'm not coming at this from a place of ignorance. First things first. She needs to learn how to set and enforce boundaries with them. If her therapist hasn't helped her with this yet, perhaps she needs a new therapist. Only she can decide when to go no or low contact with them, even if you know that's the best thing for her. All you can do is remind her that what her parents say is not the truth and that she needs to set boundaries with them. As frustrating as it is to watch, this has to come from her. She will be stronger for her. You can help her by both modeling good boundaries in your own life and by being a safe person for her to practice on. Next story 2. Younger sibling, 25F, is still living at home for free and has no plans to move out. My, 28F, parents' babying of her is legitimately turning her into a child again. She loves the attention and is okay with the situation. I think it's weird and potentially detrimental. How do I navigate this? My sister Sadie is sheltered and immature. I thought it would maybe pass after she hit her 20s, but she still acts like she's in her teens. Sorry in advance for length. She lives at home with my parents working a service job that is well above her ability and education. Literally. Sadie has a master's degree from a top university, and in a demanding tech field. However, she turned down multiple high-salary job offers to live at home with my parents. And she only took the service job because, after living with them for a year, jobless, they gave her the ultimatum to move out or get a job. Sadie is pretty lazy and was watching TikTok and YouTube all day long. She is still living completely rent-free, utility, food, etc. She doesn't help around the house. Also, since my parents live in a retirement community, moved early, she is legitimately sheltered versus if she was living at home in the town we grew up in. Everyone around her is 60+ years old. Sadie is emotionally immature, as well. She often bursts into tears at the smallest criticism, e.g. comments from our mom like, "Hey, can you remember to put your dishes from the sink to the dishwasher?" and, at times, Uses tears as a weapon. Since she doesn't have any friends, she never learns social cues from her peers and is socially awkward and inept, which can be embarrassing at times. Because of all of this, she has basically picked up on my parents' personality traits. Sadie and my mom go on vacations together all the time, and day trips to local theme parks. When I was last home, Sadie had 10 stuffed animals on her bed. She also still sleeps with her childhood blanket and occasionally shares a bed with my mom while my dad is at work. I can't even begin to state how detrimental I think that is, so I won't, but I voiced my opinions on it frequently to family. Side note, I am absolutely sure there is no abuse going on, but I am worried about her mental health and age regression. Next year will be her 4th year living at home, at what was supposed to be a 1-year patch solution. I know everyone has their own path, but feel like Sadie is missing out on her prime 20s. I got engaged after 3 years of dating my fiancé, and looking back, I had a ton of fun going out with friends and dating in my early and mid-20s. I have a few friends in the dating scene now, and they've said it's been much harder to date in your late 20s and early 30s than when we were 22 or 25 years old. Since she's never been in a relationship, I worry she'll have trouble finding a partner if she keeps waiting to date. She does still want a partner and family, I have asked. Or, she'll settle with the first guys she meets because she hasn't had time to learn what she likes/doesn't like in relationships. When I tried approaching her from this angle, she is romanticizing my parents' timeline and how mom and dad met in their mid-30s. Which is technically true, but they were FWB who got eloped after my mom got knocked up with me at 34. It obviously worked out, but it wasn't planned. My dad had dated around for years, and my mom was previously married/divorced before that as well. She seems to be blind to that aspect and certain she'll find someone easy peasy in 10 years when she's 34. I just worry about her not being able to form relationships outside of her bubble at home. If something ever happened to my parents, God forbid, I worry about her response due to her attachment to them as well as her future. She has no emotional support systems outside of me, and she's super dependent on them still, whereas I'm fully independent. I'm going home to visit in 2 months and don't know how I can bring this delicate subject up without upsetting everyone. My parents still see their youngest as the baby and don't like her getting upset, weaponized tears, but I feel like they need a plan. The last I heard, she was no longer looking into moving out anytime soon. My parents also deserve a break, and time to themselves during this time of their lives. Am I wrong here? Comment. My older sister is a lot like Sadie, except my sister is nowhere near as smart. It took a long time for me to just let go and let my mom/parents make their own mistakes and absolve myself of responsibility. I was always the little fixer in my family, and dropping that and setting boundaries has been huge for me. Good luck, and I'm sorry, this is a super frustrating dynamic to witness. The pain of interference just wouldn't be worth it. She has to make her own decisions about her life, and so do your parents. They're all adults. Not everyone follows the same path. Live your life and be happy. There's no guilt in being happy for yourself. Sadly, you can only control your parents as much as you can control your sister. You have to hope they will one day become completely fed up with her and forcibly make her move out. She's likely going to be a lifelong pain in the ass. I'd recommend keeping her at arm's length. Don't feel cause she's your sister you have to take any responsibility for her when she inevitably comes to you for help for whatever situation she's got herself in. When you give her an inch, she'll take a mile. Came here to say this. My siblings and I have gotten into each other's business a lot over the years, and it doesn't go well. And there's usually stuff going on that you don't know about. If your parents or sister ask for your opinion, you can give it, obviously, but I would avoid getting involved at all. Absolutely. My brother is 34, still living with our parents, hasn't been in a relationship since he was 16, and spent much of his 20s without a job. My parents started charging him rent at some point, but it's not much and they're saving it for him if he ever moves out. He doesn't know about this though. He's been holding down his current job for years, so he's got that going. He's always got some health issues he's complaining about, which gets him pity from my mom. He doesn't have any handicap or is mentally slow. In fact, he was better in school than me, and my parents paid for a private school in a field he wanted for the last 2 years of his school. I got the equivalent amount in cash eventually, but not as promised for my graduation. I got it when I got married, showed me the true value of women and all that. What do I do? Nothing. I don't even live on the same continent anymore. I ask about him when I FaceTime my parents, but I don't interfere. The one time I thought I had a plan that'd show him how nice it is living alone, it backfired and everyone was mad at me, so I figured they don't actually want him out, although that's what my dad always says and my mom used to say. Plan was, my husband and I were going to get cats and I asked my brother if he could live in our house and take care of them when we'd go on holidays for 2 to 3 weeks. The house was closer to his job too. I would have stocked fridge/freezer/pantry with food for him. Even though I explained to my parents that I thought this might be good for him and make him more independent, they were mad at me, which I still don't get. Just want to piggyback off you here. Just let your sister be a lost cause. She will figure it out when your parents get tired of it, when they get too old to take care of themselves, or they die. But when your parents do get too old to do things on their own, what's the plan? That is the discussion to have with your parents. Because they, your parents and your sister, may have wildly different ideas on how they will deal with that. They might think you will be footing the bill or taking care of them, because it certainly doesn't seem like your sister is even remotely capable of physically or financially assisting with that. If you think about it, you handling your sister's problems for her is not going to help her mature. It's more adults taking care of her when she needs to take care of herself. That being said, if she ever wants help, I think you need to guide her to therapy and then let her handle it from there. Lack of maturity aside, your sister almost sounds depressed and anxious. I know you're looking at it as laziness, but I tend to think when a young person withdraws so completely and is underachieving that there's probably depression and anxiety behind it.